The hiatus is here, and I hope you're all sitting comfortably and taking it well, because it's a very dangerous time for anyone in a fandom, let alone the bronies, who seem to take it to unparalleled proportions of panic. I'm not. I'm feeling rather chilled about it. But one thing still remains for me to tackle before the second half comes round, and that is picking up the pieces of the episodes that I missed looking at when they first aired. In fact, there are 5 of them to look at today. More than I ever anticipated, but that's how sometimes life works. So sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and get ready for a special edition of Pones N Stuff, looking at seeing whether these episodes hold up to muster. Thanks to WrestleMania, the MCM Comic Con, and the fragility of my emotional and mental complex, because without them this video would not be happening. Then again, I stuck it in the schedule from the moment Season 8 was announced, knowing I was going to miss at least 3 episodes. I wasn't counting on other things happening to miss a further 2, which explains the heavy number we've got to look at here. The honest thing is that if a season goes by and I am analysing it on this channel and episodes are not done, they will be in a video like this. They were such a massive success last year that I inevitably knew I would be doing the exact same thing again. However, I did not anticipate that I'd be doing it with such stringent planning. But I am prepared for any situation, which shows why I stuck part 1 on the thumbnail, knowing in the second half of the season I am in all certainty going to be doing another one. Then again, life can throw curveballs, so you never know whether that'll actually be a certainty or not. That being said, let's get on to the 5 episodes in question that are going to go under the analytical microscope today. The Maud Couple, Fake It Till You Make It, Granny's Gone Wild, Horseplay, and Meltdown. Were these worth missing, or did I gloss over a real gem? The only way to find out is to bury my head into it and start going through them. As far as history goes, Maud and Pinky episodes never deliver whenever they come up, usually in the recent seasons anyway, at the earliest possible opportunity, ready to cause me much irritation. They often follow the same formula, having Pinky's hyperactivity be a contrast to Maud's sterile bluntness, and they wrap a lackluster story around it to try and push that into your faces. However, as noted by Hearthbreakers in Season 5, when another character is taking the lead away from one of those two, or even both of them, it makes it infinitely better, as it can forge new character relationships and deliver something different from the norm. And this is why I have to thank Mudbriar immensely, because while the episode started off like what we've seen on many different occasions, his behavioural crossover between the best of Maud and Quibblepants gave Pinky ammunition to not only call out her own biased hypocrisies in her behaviour, but showcase her in an angry way we've not seen in a very, very long time, refreshing the entire storytelling complex as she came to be the antagonist of this episode that it most definitely needed to show the well-rounded nature of her character, as comedy and drama exchanged batting order to balance a steady pace and to make this newfound energy not get wasted as conflict slowly but surely sowed its seeds and reaped very bountiful rewards. And while the moral of not judging a book by its cover has been done before in Season 1's Bridal Gossip, to see it executed with more depth and the complexity of sibling relationships and courtship means it's strengthened rather than undermined by its repetition. Themes of happiness and understanding of one's desires against the blatant hypocrisy makes it stand ever taller as every character drove it down to become a linchpin of this episode's success. Now sure, the animation and music, while offering some notable elements, weren't up to scratch, but like a lot of episodes this season, it provided substance with just enough style to get it over the line. I don't really know how to say this though, but I'm relieved to see Maud and Pinky have finally produced an episode that I believe is of good quality, even if Mudbriar was the one who drove it to that success. It may have been abrasive to begin with, but once it got going, the path this episode forged for itself was rewarded with a grade that it thoroughly deserved. Overall, the Maud couple scored a total of 16 out of 25, which is a B- and a sledgehammer to normal conventions. Let's move on to the next one. The hype for Fake It Till You Make It was quite high for me, because Fluttershy in a fashion setting, that was on my wish list, albeit slightly tweaked to benefit Zephyr's inclusion. Of course, he wasn't in this one. So the fact that this is happening is still a good thing, because it worked well for Green Isn't Your Colour 7 seasons ago, so surely it would come through here with as much enthusiasm as I could take from it. Well, I'm sad to report that this was not the case, and what annoyed me is that Josh Hamilton did some things right in spite of its obvious problems, in showcasing the negatives of Fluttershy's most potent aspect of character growth, her assertiveness, proving that she can't rely on it all the time and that her shy side still remains and needs to be put into the front line when needed at times, while she highlighted drastic action to avoid it, which is nice conflict for the character. However, to base an entire episode around this premise, and what was a very nice one on paper, left this as a mind-numbingly repetitive, dry and annoying visual experience. It provided some intriguing visual redesigns for Shy Animal Horse, as Andrea Libman gave one of her most confident and layered performances to date, but if that's all the episode has to drive itself with, alongside the variety and music that such frequently changing personas can carry, it doesn't create entertainment, but pessimism, as its message about self-confidence got lost in a mire of shoehorning and jumbled ethics, as the sub-moral of supporting a friend clashes with it to the point where Fluttershy benefits from it on one end, while her friends are not allowed proper lip service due to its poor execution. While this episode does throw up a good amount of laughs at times and excites the eyes and ears, when it is just an unrefined excuse to dress Fluttershy up in costumes leaves you desperately wanting more, there's not much more that I can really say positively about it. I mean, it's not the worst episode ever, as Style tried its hardest to disguise the lack of substance within it, but that only did some of the work that it desired to do. It's definitely one that doesn't try to improve on a setup that should have been more than what it was, expanding on the sociological discrimination of Manhattan and the harsh retail life within it would have been a much more interesting story to tell, but instead I'm flaying vitriolic verbiage at questioning just why it dropped the ball so badly when it came to this story, because it's not really a story to begin with. It's a platform for someone's Fluttershy fashion fantasies that was all undone by real-world logic, and that's just not enough to keep an episode above choppy water despite some positives being noted. Overall, Fake It Till You Make It scored a total of 7 out of 25, which is a D- and a massive fall from grace compared to the last one. Well, we're only 2 out of 5 in, we need to move on to the third part of the quintet. Now we have an episode whose title you do not want to repeat around your parents. Hell, I'm going to say this right now, you do not want to be the one having to explain to friends and family why you search the term Granny's Gone Wild into Google. Then again, you have incognito mode, you may want to use it, as this episode was a character study into selfish desires, following the rules too legitimately, and realising that the cliches of the aged aren't all they've cracked up to be. So yeah, maybe you can explain to people that it's all about cartoon ponies going to their version of Las Vegas and having a good time. Then again, some people may think it's a bit dirty, but considering the morals and themes I've just stuck in front of it, maybe it's not too bad. Now, while it was a bit of a slog to sit through Rainbow Dash's repeated literal interpretations of Applejack's rules and seeing her frustrations of not getting onto that damn roller coaster of her dreams, it started out uncomfortable but gradually turned into a nice insight into a section of the character population we've rarely seen outside of family moments, showing how alive they are in contrast to how they've been represented and portrayed before. Now that may sound good, but it led to a somewhat predictable ending that was not worth sitting through an abundant amount of tedium for. Its pace went downhill with that, but the gradual heightening and scaling back of various conflict elements added depth to a story that needed it, as the characters clashed to ensure it kept going, but without real impact on the viewer as it was expected and followed presumed form. On top of that, the sights and new locations within Las Pegasus, Applejack's visions, and a couple of expressions were fine, but the episode limped to life on what small merits it could have. Same could be said with the music, despite some nice disco numbers being thrown into the mix. The message, despite resonating and having a nice delivery, didn't really come through the episode's events to make it much sense in the broader scheme of things. Sure, we saw the elderly lovely apples do things that weren't expected of them, but to see Rainbow say she learnt something from the experience feels so shoehorned and unjust, considering her behaviour up to that point, making its happy ending feel moot and unjust. The episode as a whole had a fun premise, but just like Rainbow herself, took itself way too seriously to be anything other than a poor showcase. It's not terrible, but much like Fake It Till You Make It, it tested the patience of the viewer rather than entertaining them, making it much more forgettable in that instance. Overall, Granny's Gone Wild scored a total of 7 out of 25, which is a D-. Same ratings 2 in a row, eh? Well, we've got to keep going. Let's move on to the episode I've been least looking forward to analysing. In regards to horseplay, there is not much that I can muster about this unmitigated disaster. Hey, I'm a poet and I just don't know it. In fact, I bet I could suggest a better use of this episode's time by formulating a better story than the one that was provided, instead of putting the viewers and myself through a torturous showcase of another one of Twilight's flawed ideas and her reluctance to not see it through again. Why not use the play as a way to examine Celestia's dramatic tastes and her attitudes towards the factual accuracy of the script, a conflict between buttering up those who've lived the life and trying to please them, instead of giving a truthful account of it with all the negatives included. It could have been a great social commentary on adaptations of biographies and the journalistic and writing integrity of it, which would have given the moral of not telling lies a much bigger impression to roll off. Sure, it sounds like Ponyville Confidential Part 2, but that would have been much more layered and interesting than the dross we got here instead. The story, its conflict, and the setup were all done from the first minute to make you squirm and produce nothing else, as it took its sweet time to get to the inevitable blow-off that we expected, as Twilight ignored the advice of her friends and the element of bloody honesty, because her bullish ways can't possibly be deterred. Like so many episodes we've seen this year, it was infuriating that this reared its head again. Now sure, there are some good things to be found. Celestia seemingly was the only character who benefited from this episode by giving us more depth to her character and a quality voice acting performance by Nicole Oliver. And honestly, there was a little more to smile about too, because once again, Styles saved an episode flagging on substance as Pinky's outrageous effects, as well as a variety of locations, costumes, and Twilight's greatest facial expression that she's ever produced, helped to push the barest of minimums of Celestia's delivery of the overused moral to make this episode appear as if it had done enough. But truthfully, it was as far from that as it could be. It stands as one of the most insufferable episodes I've ever seen of this show, because much like Fake It Till You Make It, the reason for the episode's existence felt convoluted and stagnant, meaning that it didn't stand a chance on analysis on almost every single level, because it all fell down like a stack of dominoes, one by one. And it may have finished on a spectacular put-down of the state of film watching by noting that every poor and substandard production can be saved by wondrous effects, but you would imagine that would have been even greater if it had all been put forward with what I'd mentioned earlier about the production of the play and Celestia's reaction to it. That would have all made more sense, and it would have been incredible, and it would have been a fantastic flourish to end on. Instead, this episode rushed together moments of pure quality right at its end to mask over the worrisome issues that were prevalent from the beginning. Maybe if the setup wasn't so goddamn awful and more work had been done to ensure all of it flowed within itself instead of stumbling over every ragged rock it trod on, maybe this could have achieved better than what I'm about to give it. It was a good idea, just executed so damn poorly. No wonder it failed as boldly as it did. It was saved by minor positives to get a rating that, in my opinion, it doesn't deserve in any shape or form. Overall, Horseplay scored a total of 4 out of 25, which is an E+. Yes, it scored 1 mark higher than non-compete clause, despite being a worse episode in totality, because based on my rating criteria, it saved its bacon by the smallest possible margin you can think of. In fact, if I didn't hold all of these episodes to the exact same criteria, and I wanted to deconstruct it and reevaluate it, I would put this in my worst episodes of all time selection. I mean, it still is, but that's not the point. This episode was abominable. it should have ranked alongside the Showstoppers, Spike at Your Service and Baby Cakes as the absolute worst, not one of the worst. It struck so lucky that I want to ask whoever wrote this whether I can get their advice on lottery tickets. That is how lucky this was. And yet, we still have one episode left. Do not let me down, and ensure that I am left beaming from ear to ear, because if I have to end this missed episodes anthology on another negative, I am going to be really, really angry. Thankfully, we end this reviewing merry-go-round on an episode that I've been looking forward to analysing, even in this constricted format, since the moment it aired. Because this is Meltdown, the episode where Spike went through puberty, and boy oh boy, did it manage to deliver the goods that I anticipated from the get-go. If you want to know an episode that had hype going into it that matched and exceeded those expectations, then this is the episode to look at. Even with a lack of subtlety on show, the themes of maturity and growing up were used to such fantastic effect, it developed a character who is in desperate need of it to such a magnificent extent, being able to balance laugh out loud moments and drama to make it much more of a roller coaster ride than you would expect. But considering it was such a tumultuous time for the little dragon, maybe I should have anticipated it. The tension built naturally to carry the same spirit it had from the beginning, and through a strict linear structure of storytelling, everything was streamlined to benefit from the massive amounts of lore, world building, progression and continuity that spewed from it like a fountain. As far as stories and narratives go, I can only think of a few of the absolute best that can top this, as the allegory for its themes was much more grounded than its elaborate predecessors of similar ilk were. The characters all had a role to play, fluctuating from comedic, expository and plot accelerating roles to ensure none were left to waste, while the voice acting from all concerned was great, despite a flawed line or two from Pinky and the overplaying of jokes dampening their impact. Musically, this episode used its lack of orchestral frivolity that would have been a death knell for many others to its advantage by creating moments of drama and solace that impacted immensely, while those moments that did have BGMs going on weren't overly intense, but did what they needed to do to make awkward and action-packed moments of the episode flourish, even if it struggled with the aforementioned positive all the same. Similarly, the animation struggled like the music did in noticeably having a lackluster entity from the outset. No major set pieces were on show, which meant that it did not hit the next level. However, thanks to a humongous amount of locations, Spike's awesome facial expressions and appearance that was ever changing, The Rock, and a good use of camera effects meant that this episode had scope even when it looked to be weak on paper. As for the morals, to see one about the changes of growing up and the pastoral care of friends being used to give confidence being utilised much better than fake it till you make it ever could believe was so fantastically applied from the moment Spike entered the first frame in the first seconds of this episode right up until the last. It gave it the substance it needed to build around quite a fantastic experience that did more than its fair share to proclaim itself as, without a doubt in my mind, Spike's best episode to date. Something that makes me really happy to say, even though it was missing some minor yet noticeable pieces that would have easily put it in the Hall of Fame if they were included, a place I believe it could have gotten to if it wanted to be a little more bombastic. However, the fact it took a more measured and reassured route is something I am not going to criticise it for, because it achieved all it could within it, to where it's really standing up quite proudly as one of the best episodes this season, and that is something that I am definitely going to be taking all the way to the bank. Overall, Meltdown scored a total of 20 out of 25, and that is a B+. In closing, I can now answer the question I noted earlier, that highlighted 2 episodes were gems I glossed over, and 3 were episodes that if I weren't analysing this in depth, I would have been more than happy to have missed, because seriously, when hype justifies that 3 poor episodes should be doing better than they are, and they disappoint so heavily, you can't help but feel aggrieved. But this is the gamble I take. The episodes I miss aren't all going to be great. Hype from different circles are going to inflate them to proportions where they aren't going to reach my expectations. And honestly, some, like the Maud couple, are going to completely punch me in the face and shove my expectations down my throat. And that is exactly what happened. In the case of Meltdown, I knew it was going to do well. From the moment I saw the synopsis, from the moment I saw what was going to happen, I said to myself, you know what, this is gonna be amazing, and you know what? It was a couple of points away from doing exactly that, and I couldn't be more happy. However, this video is a little bit of a disappointment, because if I had one more good episode, making it 6 instead of 5, I would have actually had a good balance to end on. Instead, I have a more or less poor showing overall in comparison with what I was honestly hoping for. But that's the beauty of this kind of thing. It's a risk. And you're reviewing episodes months after they were last relevant in some cases. It's bound to not really live up to what you would want it to be. But life is like that too, and we should just move on and look forward to the second half of the season, because season 8, sure, there's been a few duds in it, but it's been relatively consistent. There have been really good quality episodes, most of which have hit around between 16 and 20. Only a few have really gone below that, and most of them haven't even gone below 5, so I can be even more pleased to some regard about those poor showings. But I know that the second half of the season needs to keep its solid run going, otherwise we're going to run into some more problems, and that is not a good thing, I will say that. But the beauty of not knowing will mean that when I analyse these episodes, you're going to hear my bluntest opinion first, and I'm not going to hold anything back. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching. This has been a Pones N Stuff missed episode special for the CC Network. Enjoy the rest of the hiatus, and I will see you all next time.